Maryann Dybiec. Take it away, Attorney Cherry.
Thank you very much, Larry. My name is Attorney Eric Cherry. I'm here with Maryann Dybiec and Mr. Thomas Rein, candidate for judge.
Rein,
I apologize.
Rein.
Off to a good start.
Rein like the river. Rain. Although rain's better than snow. So
That's absolutely true. We will be talking about a variety of family court topics today, although our topic today is specifically when you get pregnant, what is the first things you should do? What happens next? But if we have callers today, we want you to be aware that any discussion of issues related to family court on this show is intended to be informational only. It does not create an attorney-client relationship or is not intended to be counted on as legal advice. We would ask you, if you're seriously considering a legal case in relation to your family court issues, that you consult with an attorney. Maryann.
And there's one here you can call.
That's true.
Well, two actually today. I also wanted to mention to our callers, if you call in and you talk about cases, we'd appreciate if you don't use any last names. It's okay if you say you're in family court, but we'd really rather not use any last names if you want to discuss details of your case. Basically, when you call in, we're going to try to help you maneuver the system, and we'd like to hear your stories about what's going on in your case in court. We are expecting Margaret Woowert from Toledo to give us a call because she wrote this wonderful book, which I'm in, and she's going to call in and talk about it. So when she calls in, our producer will let us know she's on the line, and we're going to put her live so she can talk to you about her book. So until Margaret comes, Mr. Rein is here, who's running for judge in Cuyahoga County, and I think the biggest question of all is, what made you decide to run for judge?
So I've been a practicing attorney for 29 years. I think it's almost 29 years to the day. I worked in the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. I've been a municipal prosecutor. I've done civil cases. I've done federal cases. I've done appeals. I've been in court on a regular basis, daily basis, from Monday through Friday. So, born in Cleveland, lived in Northeast Ohio my whole life. I think this is the time that we can make things better. We can make things where we need to be, where I think now, I've seen a lot of things, I have a lot of stories, I've represented a lot of clients. I think what's important, vital here is that we need the best people, the most qualified, the most experienced, to handle the day-to-day duties of being a judge in terms of deciding what needs to be done. In other words, Cuyahoga County Common Pleas jurisdiction includes all felony cases originating in Cuyahoga County. From felonies, we're talking about simple drug possessions, all the way to aggravated murder, including death penalty cases, in addition to major civil cases, those with controversies of $15,000 or more. So it involves a lot of people's lives. So my thing overall is I've seen a lot, and Ohio now, 10, 15 years ago, we were 10th overall in the quality of education. Now we're like 35th or 36th. What is Ohio number one in? Drug death overdoses. Ohio, which I believe is the greatest state in our whole country. Great place to raise a family,
Amen.
Midwest, traditional family values, wonderful people. We have a lake, we have resources, we have the economy, we have a lot of great people, a lot of great businesses, we have museums, we have some of the best health care in the world. Great place to raise a family. Unfortunately, now you are more likely to die of a drug death overdose in the state of Ohio than you are in a car accident. We do have education opportunities. We do have employment opportunities through some of the different various treatment programs. We also have a lot of empty beds. So I think we need to fix it.
What does empty beds mean?
So folks need rehabilitation. We need drug treatment. There's a friend of mine who runs Maryann House, the community-based correction facility. I was there several months ago, and there's empty beds. There's folks who need treatment. There's folks who need rehabilitation. There's
And
folks
these beds
who
are not full?
They're not full. They're not full.
It seems
That's
bizarre to me,
amazing.
Mr. Rein. Multiple times I've had defendants who have been facing drug charges, and it's always a challenge to find them a bed. That's probably the hardest part
Yeah,
if
that
you want to
amazes
get
me.
somebody into
So-
an intervention in lieu of what have you.
Well, unfortunately, there is the bureaucracy of drug treatment, and it'd be political. But what this gentleman, who I've known for over 30 years personally, has assured me that if I order as a judge somebody to get treatment, somebody to get a bed, they will be there that afternoon. They will be there that afternoon.
Okay.
So there's lots of folks who need treatment, who need help. There's a lot of addictive type folks. There's folks with mental health challenges, mental health issues. At the same time, they need those resources. They need education opportunities. They need employment opportunities so they can raise their families and provide for their families. So this has to stop. This has to end. So I'm in court every day. I've been to the drug treatment facilities. We have some great resources there. There's a lot of good judges. There's drug courts. There's a lot of good judges who are doing the best they can. But I feel based upon my experience and my expertise, my knowledge, my integrity, I can get the job done. I get the job done. I've worked both sides. I've been a prosecutor. I've been a defense attorney. I've done it all. So, and I'm a workaholic. So I and I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Lived in Northeast Ohio. Went to college at Case Western Reserve University. Cleveland Marshall College of Law for law school, where I was a professor there afterwards. So I've been around. I kind of know what it takes to make this better. So we owe this. This is a great show. This is a great forum because this is about kids. The book says it's all about kids.
Right.
Well, guess what? We owe it not only to our children, we owe it to our children, grandchildren, and future generations to make sure we get this right. Now, the kids are losing their parents left and right because of overdoses. And who's raising the children? Sometimes grandparents, sometimes the state.
Right, yeah.
The most important thing that we can give our children is a proper upbringing. And it's all of a sudden, there's stumbling blocks. And if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So we can do this together. We owe it to future generations. We owe it to children. We owe it to our grandchildren, although I don't have grandchildren yet. I've raised my children in this community, and we need to get this right. We need to do this right to save them, but we can do it together. So I feel very vehement about this. I feel very fervent about this. Look, there's folks, when we send our kids off to school, we care about the safety of our children. We want to make sure when we send them off to school, they're safe in school. We want them to come home safe. We want to make sure they're better educated. When our loved ones, when we run to the store, somebody goes to the store, we want to make sure that everybody's safe. We want to have safety in our homes. We want to be safe everywhere. That had been said, a lot of this interacts with the crime rate going up is drugs. I can't even gauge a percentage of the cases where I've represented somebody on the criminal defense side where it's or a prosecutor for that matter, intertwined with drug or addiction or some sort of substance abuse. So this needs to stop. So I feel because of the resources, because of my knowledge, because of the people I know, that I'm the best qualified to take care of these issues. And this is important. If we don't do something now, because the situation is getting worse, we need to stop this. We need to nip this in the bud now and get real about this.
So you, because of your experience and because of you working at Cuyahoga County all the time, you even mentioned drug court. What would you change about that program, if anything, or enhance about it that you feel would be, that would better address the rate of drug use and overdoses in the county?
So the judges that we have who are personally doing drug court are good judges.
Yes.
They know what they're doing, they're qualified, they are experienced, they help people. They're helping people, they're making a difference. What I would do personally, and I can't speak for the other judges, because drug court's a specialized sort of docket, what I would do personally for those folks who come before my docket, I would personally make sure individually, and again, I can't speak for the other judges.
Of course
the
not.
drug court judges are doing a great job. But
Yes,
I
they are.
personally, my philosophy is to know these folks individually who come to my court, to know about their families, to know about their background, to know about what makes them tick, and to know about see what agendas are on their plate so that we can make sure that we take care of those and address them one-to-one. You come into my courtroom, you're not going to be a number or a statistic. You're going to be a person. You are a person. Mm-hmm. So we got to make sure we resolve that issue and those problems right away. And here's what happens as well. So a lot of folks who have drug issues also have mental health challenges. So that comes into play as well. So there's a mental health court docket, there's a drug court docket. I'm not sure if we need to integrate that. Those two are not a little more carefully, but I can only do what I can do in terms of folks who come in front of my docket.
There was certainly some rumblings for a bit of time, and I don't know what's happened with them in recent months about establishing a dual diagnosis docket along the same lines that you're talking about, managing the mental health challenges alongside the drug challenges, because it seems that often with mental health issues, because of the stigma that is there in this society for accepting even the fact that a mental health diagnosis exists, causes people to run away from that system and self-medicate, which then in turn leads to the drug issues. So if you are cognizant, if you have a court or a docket designed to be cognizant of those issues, you can kind of manage the thing as a package, as opposed to having it run between two judges, which, they may be able to work together and that would be fine. But just to streamline the process, what would be your opinion about that, or do you have anything to add?
I think it'd just be very hard to categorize someone with both a drug issue and mental health issue. It'd be very high. You'd have to have certain qualifications to even be accepted there. You'd have to have certain criteria. I think it's a challenge, but is it something that needs to be explored further and looked at? Absolutely, 100%, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because again, the drug issues, the drug crisis, the overdose issues affects family, it affects people, it affects our crime rate, it affects everything. So we need to do a more of a careful review and study to make sure that we get this right and do it right away. So again, I've been on the prosecutor side, I've been on the defense side, I've been out in the communities, I've lived in this community, I have my business, my office is in this community and always has. I'm going to do what I can do to make sure everything gets as good as possible.
Because certainly practicing from a family court side, I can't tell you how often I see circumstances where parents are both in abuse, neglect, dependency proceedings. And for those of you who don't know, that would be a permanent custody proceeding. So the state is trying to take your children away based on your inability or your unfitness as a parent, is the specific term that's used. And usually that interplays with drugs or domestic violence. And so those folks, at least one parent, sometimes both, might be facing criminal proceedings as well. I don't know your experience upon that front. Could you care to comment?
Oh, yeah, very much so. So, yeah, obviously, domestic violence is a very serious problem. It's a crime, and it's getting worse. So the way it normally starts out is if somebody has a domestic violence conviction, regular domestic violence, if there is such a thing, starts out as a misdemeanor. So you end up in municipal court. If you have one or more convictions, then you're in felony court, you're in Cuyahoga County Common Police Court, and then you're not only facing local jail time, then you're also facing potential of a felony conviction with prison time. And look, it's all about the kids. Somebody should write a book on that. It's all about
Somebody should write a book about
it. It comes down to children, because look, we are our children, and our children become us. The apple doesn't fall far from our tree.
Right.
They're going to emulate, they're going to imitate. So what happens then, we see the cycle of domestic violence, we see the cycle of drug use, and I ask my clients, basically, if I find out right away about the family history. Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? Who are your parents? Who are the significant folks in your life? And there's a pattern. There's a cycle, to the point where it's almost scientific, where we can evaluate based upon previous experiences and previous habits. So if we know what causes the problem, if we know what the issues are, we can deal with them head on, face to face, whether it's drug issues, domestic violence, lots of different things.
Okay. Maryann?
Do we have a caller on the line? Is Margaret waiting?
Go ahead, Margaret.
I'm here.
Hi, Margaret. Thanks for calling
I'm very
in.
sorry. I couldn't get through. I had a time, really bad time getting through the number.
Oh, that's okay. You're here now.
Yep.
Except I have to get my glasses. So I was telling everybody about the book that you wrote. Do you want to give us a little bit of background, and then I can read a page out of it for them? Did you hear me?
I'll have a look about why I wrote the book.
Yeah, a little background.
Yeah. Well, I did supervised visits for the courts for 15 years, and I could have written a book a lot bigger than this one,
Right.
with all of the wonderfulness that went on. But we thought it was important for a layperson who's never had this issue to understand what a child goes through when they go from one parent to the other.
So what was your favorite part of the book?
Well, there was a passage in there about volunteers that I thought was pretty good.
I know you chose
Did you
that
ever
one.
read
you did choose that one, but before I read this, I just want to say that Margaret is such a selfless person that when I asked her to pick something to read out here, she chose to make it about other people and not herself, because that's how Margaret is. So she'd like to read this part. It says, "We weren't so lucky with some of our volunteers." Is that the right one, Margaret?
You know what?
Did we lose her?
We got another caller. Let me see if I can get Margaret back. Go ahead. Keep reading.
I apologize, Margaret, if this is the wrong one. We weren't so lucky with some of our volunteers because all volunteers come with baggage. From time to time, as a nonprofit, we were offered free clerical help from LCJFS. They had clients who had to get their 20 or 30 hours in to complete their mandatory hours of welfare to work. I had a few. The first one just didn't like us. She said what we did was too depressing. The second was a young girl who had a 4 or 5 month old and was visibly pregnant again. She had a lot of morning sickness and therefore was out sick a lot. The third lady was a divorced woman with one child, a boy who was 4 years old. The first day that mom came to work, she mentioned that she never wanted her child's father in his life. She called him a sperm donor, and because he was on SSI, her chances of ever getting a lot of child support were poor. Every time she made a sarcastic or derogatory remark about her child's dad, I would correct her and say that the entire premise of our organization was to provide a child with two parents in his or her life, no matter what the two thought of each other. Amen. And did we get Margaret back on the line?
Yeah, she's on the line.
Okay, Margaret, I just wanted
Yeah,
to
I'm
read.
here.
I just wanted to read one more thing because I know you mentioned me in here, and watch, I can't find the page now. Oh, I found it. I just wanted to read a little bit about what Margaret wrote about me. We had a ton of fun together. We worked together for many years. Margaret was my mentor for how long, Margaret? I can't remember. But anyway, here's part of what she said about us. In all the escapades, I think our adventure on the way to the conference in New York City was the funniest. We were presenters for a seminar about divorce and its effect on children and families. We got into New York City late. It was rush hour, and of course, being two ladies, we had to make a pit stop. Now I'm going to tell you the rest of the story, but not identify which of us was, I can't read that, but not identify which of us was which. We pulled over into a parking lot. We had no idea where we were. It was a scary neighborhood. If it was safe or what. Realizing that this was as good a bathroom option as we were going to get, one of us played lookout while the other one went to the back of the lot, found a secluded place, and took care of business. Pretty soon we were back on the road and made it to the hotel with time to spare. We are more like sisters than friends, and with each other on our phones speed dial. We also went to conferences together, not just CRC conferences, but also Supervised Visitation Network conferences. Once on our way home from DC, we stopped and saw the memorial for Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. That's another memory we share. So the fact that the Cleveland chapter is still going strong and thriving, that's me, is a testament to Maryann's skill and passion. Thank you, Margaret. Thanks to her assistance, non-custodial parents are getting the help they need with their child support, which makes it more likely that these non-custodial parents stay in the children's lives. I could write pages about Maryann and our adventures and still not tell everything. Okay, great book. So we did say we were going to give away a free autographed copy to the first caller, and I think our producer said we had a caller. Yes? Or is that still Margaret?
Well, the other person hung up.
Okay, so Margaret, anything else you want to talk about the book or the work we do?
No, I guess you know that I got called out of retirement, and I'm heading up a committee now. We're going to do therapeutic supervised visits in Toledo in Lucas County, and that should be off the ground completely by the end of the summer. So we'll be doing those kind of visits for the courts and for children's services.
Margaret never retires.
They'll be done by clinicians. So that's going to be a different perspective for us.
Right.
Margaret, may I ask a question?
Sure.
How would you define the difference between a regular supervised visit and a therapeutic supervised visit?
The
Good
therapeutic visit, there is a lot more volatility between the two parents, if I can believe that. But they also need,
Right.
they're on the road to reunification, and to get the reunification done, they need that clinician to help them. it's almost like their own individual social worker working with them.
Well, that's a really great idea. I think
Yeah,
we need
we're
to
starting
do
that.
a
We're
little
starting
bit.
that too. That's
Okay.
Beth is supposed to call in, my assistant. She has all those initials after her name, so she's going to do that. We're going to start our own. Not that we copy Margaret. I mean, you wouldn't be mad if I did, but I think therapeutic supervised visitation is an excellent idea, and we are going to start that also.
I would, if I may comment, I would think at least in Cuyahoga County, not only are the resources that are available for supervised visits overly stretched, we need as much help on that front as we can get. But I would say probably 2/3, if not more, of all the requests for supervised visits really come down to the angst between the parties. It has nothing to do with, or very little to do with, danger to the child and a need for somebody to supervise one of the parents because they do present that danger. It's really because one parent doesn't trust the other parent or doesn't like the other parent. And so
That's such a problem.
and the therapeutic angle then, to the extent that parties are willing to avail themselves of it, might be at least, capable of addressing that issue. You have any comments, Margaret? If you're still there?
Yes. And the person that has supervision, this is very, very helpful to them because they can show the courts that they aren't doing whatever the other parent is saying that they're doing, that they're not the bad guy, so to speak, that they can get done what needs to be done. They take them out on visits. They go places. In Toledo we have COSI, which is Imagination Station here, and we have some museums and things that the kids can go to. So they don't just stay in the same room with the same person every time. So
Right.
Right. These visits have come a long way since, I know you've been doing it a lot longer than I have, but I think I've been in the business 20 years, and it's come a long way. So it's so much better. Remember, we used to have them all in one room, remember? Sometimes we do it at churches, and sometimes we'd have 5 families in one room. I mean, we still do that, but we're trying to get away from that and make it more personable with the kids.
Well, that never happened in Toledo, but that happened a lot
right.
in Washington, D.C.
Right, that's how DC was ran, right?
Yeah.
But not at your center. You guys had the individual
No.
rooms. Yeah, you guys had a nice setup at the church.
Margaret,
Yeah.
could you comment about the cost of therapeutic supervised visits versus traditional?
Well, the clinical supervised visitation or the therapeutic is sometimes covered by the parents' insurance, but it's not done. If they can afford it, we do have a sliding fee scale for them. So, how much do you want to see your kid? How much is it worth?
Well,
the commercial with Visa.
I don't know how the economy is in Toledo, but I'm certain that if we were to do something like this in Cuyahoga County, that there would be a lot of parents who would balk at the cost just because they're already probably paying an attorney, probably paying a guardian ad litem, probably paying maybe child support too if they're the non-custodial parent, and now you're going to add a clinician to the mix if they don't have insurance that'll cover it. Now you're talking thousands of dollars for a person who probably makes just about $2,000 a month. That can be a stretch for a lot of families in Northeast Ohio.
Well, we have to make our judges aware then
Yeah.
of what they can assign and what they can't assign. Yeah. I mean, I think the judges and the magistrates who are sending us cases, they need to be told the parameters because, no offense to any magistrate at all, but a 6-hour visitation off-site is a long time. So, we prefer the visits to be 2 to 3 hours. If it goes over 3 hours, we have to change supervisors because that's just too long. Just if we're going to supervise this visit, and especially if it's off-site. So, our magistrates and judges, they need to be aware of the issues that we have when we take on a case.
Fair enough.
Well, I know that, Dr. Mark Roseman, who's the head of the one in Florida that's going to bring it to Toledo,
Yeah, the Toby
has
Center.
no problem getting the money from the parents. So
And he charges
I'm sure
a
there are
lot.
people who are left out, but he still has a full plate every time, so.
Yeah, his fees are, I want to say $95 an hour or something. Don't quote me for sure, but his fees are pretty high.
Okay.
But just for regular off-site supervised visitation with our organization is $50 an hour. So it's a 2-hour minimum. But people also have to understand, because they balk at us too, but yes, we go into the visitation, we supervise for 2 hours, and then we're on the phone with your attorney, your guardian, your psychologist, and we don't charge for that. So I just want to explain that to everybody who pays those fees.
Well, I'm not debating at all, and I don't think most people who have used your services would debate that it's worth the money.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
it's more that the people are simply stretched, and
Oh, they
they're
are,
trying to make
sure.
choices as to how they can prosecute this case to the best effect and still keep food on the table at the end of the night.
Right, and again, that's why I think our magistrates and judges, like Thomas says, he wants to run for judge. He wants to get in there and know his client, know what they can afford, know what they can accomplish, right? I think that's very important for our judges. That was a great point.
And by the way, Cuyahoga County, I get appointed to represent a lot of indigent defendants.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, folks, you talk about folks are stressed.
Yeah.
Folks are stressed.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that there are resources available, and most people do anything for their children as well. They should.
Right.
And if there's that additional cost, there's already burdens in terms of having a job. If there's that additional cost of even trying to have time with your children, look, all children need time. All children need love, time, affection, caring, nurturing. Whether you're a infant, whether you're have adult children, we all love our parents. We all need our parents. And for one parent, that would have been maybe my question for Margaret or for you two, are there any specific legal consequences in terms of cost, in terms of visitation, if it's clear one parent is causing essentially alienation of affections? Is it a split in the cost? Is one part?
Yes,
is one part?
Okay. Unless the judge or magistrate says that they want only one person to pay it.
That's true.
Yeah, again,
But
that falls on
The normal way to do it is they would split the cost, just as they would split other costs. So.
See, our magistrates around here in Cleveland, they don't do that. They typically assign one person to pay the entire fee. So Toledo judges are a lot different running the supervised, because they had you up there, Margaret.
But there's a lot of legal consequences to the alienation of affection thing, which really doesn't directly play into the supervised visits. That's kind of a symptom.
And how often does that actually come up in court? I mean, people claim it all the time.
But there's legitimate withholding issues.
Absolutely.
And if anybody who's listening, whether, man, woman, if you are the primary custodial parent of your child, I'm just going to give you this general piece of advice right now. If the other person has an order, do not withhold. You are risking the...
Yeah, we're all sick of that.
Yeah, not only are we all sick of that, but you are risking the loss of custody.
Amen.
One of the factors in the best interest analysis, as it is written in Ohio law, is which parent is more likely to facilitate custodial visits by the other parent,
Right.
If given an order for primary custodial parent.
Absolutely.
And if you then think that you're in charge and you can do whatever you want to with the other parent's time, you are risking the other party filing a motion to modify or reallocate parental rights and responsibilities on the basis of your withholding. And that's one thing that, if you get the right judge or magistrate, they're not going to like that so much.
And if you get Eric as your attorney, he gets all uppity about that too.
Yeah, so if you are being the party being withheld from, call me. But aside from that, go ahead, Margaret.
We had a case in Toledo like that. I mean, and just one that I remember. And the man or the woman kept saying, he doesn't need to see him any more often than that. So the judge put the gavel down and she said, well, how many days do you think that he should have visitation? And she said, once every other week is plenty. And so he said, I award custody to Dad.
Wow.
And I get 1 day every other week.
Wow.
That is gorgeous.
And that's how they thought that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a progressive court in Toledo. We're very,
Yes.
very fortunate to have good,
Right.
good judges and good magistrates in the court system. So
Right, you
Yeah.
definitely do.
I have one story where a party withheld a child out of state for 8 or 9 months and was held in contempt and ultimately lost custody on that basis. And I've got another case that I had to take to trial on behalf of a father. That the mother had withheld for some time on an army base on the I think it was Fort Campbell, is the one on the Kentucky-Tennessee
Oh,
border.
right, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Long story short, that one was awarded to father as well.
Yeah,
So, you know, in both of those cases, and the one Margaret's talking about, if you are a mother and you engage in withholding, you are taking a big risk. So consider that when you have an order for visitation for the father, whether it's really worth that risk.
Right. Times are changing. People are probably listening out there saying, "Oh, that's not true. I got away with it." Blah blah. Times are changing. The judges are getting smarter. The tables are turning. There's no more games. We want no more games. I'm sure the magistrates and judges want no more games. If you're going to get a divorce or you're never married, just be an adult. Like Tom was saying, every child needs both parents. So just grow up. If you don't need to talk to that person, then don't. But don't take it out on the children.
But isn't the trend been over the last decades? So it's, I mean, the starting point for the most part, correct me if I'm wrong, is shared parenting.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
almost the presumption. Now,
Okay.
under the law, one party has to move for it. So if you
Under Ohio law.
Yeah, under Ohio
Right.
law. So one party has to move for it in order for the court to consider it. But there's been plenty of times when I've been in, like the first time showing up at what had formerly been a pro se proceeding, and the magistrate or the judge is practically talking about it openly on the bench. Now, granted, pre-trials are not exactly formal.
Right.
But that said, there is a presumption coming from the bench that, if at all possible, shared parenting is what they prefer in almost all circumstances. Barring a situation where there's a legitimate safety concern or there's a legitimate neglect concern, where a parent just really doesn't want to be involved or is incapable of being involved because they're away so much, something like that.
But even in shared parenting plans, one parent is the primary custody caregiver.
Residential
Kind of.
parent for
Right.
school purposes.
That's right.
We
Which-
try not to say you have custody and you have custody. Again, we're trying to shared parenting. You're both the parents, so it's only terminology.
But
But the practical effect of it, if a child's going to living with the one parent, or even in shared parenting, if the child is residing and they're not in the same city, the child is living with the parent, going to school within the district that where one parent lives, there's still, I understand the shared parenting, but there's the practical effect at times, I'm sure both of you can agree, is still that parent kind of controls what happens in terms of the visitation.
Well,
Yes,
the
and hopefully they
care,
get
the
along
custody.
well enough.
But
I
what if they don't?
it's always
Well,
trouble.
and I think one of the things that parents should understand before they go into court, they should know that the more that they can work out between them, the less the courts will be involved in their case.
Right.
well, that's certainly
If
true.
they can suck it up and be adults, then they would do much better than to let the courts decide. I'm sure those men and women sitting in the court don't want to be the one to decide who gets Christmas, who gets Easter, who gets
That's what I
whatever.
say all the time. They
I'm
can't
sure they would
possibly
much
like
rather
it.
have it come from the parents
Right.
who say, we're going to split the holidays, we're going to do this in the summer. I'm sure they would much rather have that than them doing it.
Right.
Or from their lawyers.
Well, Margaret, if that were the case, broadly speaking, I wouldn't be employed. It's just
I
simply.
understand
Oh, we
that.
would find something for you to do.
Oh, I'm sure, but it's simply the fact that people have a hard time, when the emotions are high, and when they believe that everything is the other party's fault, to take a step back and find that maturity. It takes the hiring an attorney and having an attorney tell them what is possible under the law, and what's worth fighting for. At least that's my
And the
opinion.
other thing that comes into play, we were talking about earlier with domestic violence, and I often get the feeling of folks I've represented in a different realm. Well, why should I pay child support if he or she will not let me see my child or children? Well, because it's the law. It's the law. Once the order is established, once paternity is established, once an order is established, you are required to pay child support, to have it withheld from your income, and if you don't pay 26 out of 104 weeks, essentially, then it rises to a felony level, which again has all kinds of repercussions, consequences, where you can even lose your freedom because you have not regularly paid child support. So this is it, right? This is something where you need the help, the guidance of an expert attorney. This is something, you break a leg or you need brain surgery. This is something you can't do by yourself. So you need to call someone who, you get what you pay for, by the way. You need to call and you get expert advice. This is serious stuff. These are your children's lives. This is your well-being. Ultimately, it could be your freedom. So don't take this stuff for granted.
That's absolutely true. Go ahead, Maryann.
I was going to ask our producer if we could give out that phone number, the call-in phone number. I haven't memorized it yet.
Okay, yeah, that number is 216, and it's also, for those that are watching Facebook, it's sitting right there at the top of the description. It's 216-298-1554. 216-298-1554.
Okay, Margaret, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for calling in, and we hope to get a phone call to give away your book. So next caller gets a free an autograph book.
I'll just give you the number, and I'll send it to them, and I might even sign it and autograph it for them if they want.
Okay, great. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Margaret.
So how often are you seeing those kind of cases where somebody's facing a felony non-payment of child support?
Oh, it's more on a regular basis now. In some of the jurisdictions and counties I practice in, more and more.
Okay.
More and more evident, more and more apparent, more and more. Because sometimes they're supposed to do a show cause, supposed to put them on notice, but some folks aren't working. Some folks just don't work. Some folks don't want to work. Some folks can't work. And the problem is there's still that support order out there, and no payments are being made, and then sometimes the parent has no other choice but to initiate proceedings and with the prosecutor's office.
Can I tell a little story here?
Sure.
This is one of my favorite stories, and this is why I don't go to juvenile court show cause hearings anymore. I used to go. But there was, what was his name? There was a judge, they called him the hanging judge, Ramsey, and there was a father who didn't pay his child support. He was looking at a felony. The mom came in with the dad who was not paying, got down on her knees in front of the judge and said, "Please don't put him in jail. He watches my children so I don't have to pay a babysitter." The judge said, "Boom, sorry, you broke the law." So there's no getting around it. I've seen people cry, throw fits, and they still go to jail. So you have to abide by the law. If you're that behind in child support, there are ways for you to fix that. You can do an administrative modification. Don't let it get to the point where you have to face a judge and explain yourself, because they're not going to let you go. You broke the law. They have no choice.
Well, what do folks do, Maryann, Eric, folks who can't afford, I know here, United States Constitution requires that anybody who is ultimately facing incarceration, whether it be jail or prison, to be appointed a lawyer for any criminal case or criminal proceedings.
Right.
How does that apply to somebody? I mean, there's a lot of folks who just don't have the money to hire rich, powerful family lawyers like yourself who know what they're doing, who are experienced, but ultimately get the result. Where do they go? Where do they turn?
As a matter for a show cause hearing, if we're talking about, and for those of you who are listening, a motion to show cause is how you initiate proceedings to have somebody held in contempt of court. Contempt of court would therefore be some order of a court that you are not obeying, or allegedly not obeying. So in the sense of child support, if we're in juvenile court, and a motion to show cause has been filed either by the custodial parent or by the, it was supposed to be the administrative child support, so Job and Family Services, you have a right to an appointed attorney through the Public Defender's Office. So if that were the case, you could get appointed somebody if you really were indigent enough where you could not afford an attorney.
I've never seen them do a good job. I've never seen them do a good job.
No.
Do we have a caller on the line?
Yes, go
Who
ahead,
do we
caller.
have?
Hello?
Hello, caller? Did we lose him?
I don't think so.
Maybe that's the caller.
Hello?
Maybe that's the caller for the book.
I know, right? We want to give away the
I
book.
think they hung up on us, yeah.
Aw, call back.
I believe the Public Defender's Office has some very qualified attorneys working at it,
Right,
but
but
at the same time, just like the prosecutor's office, just about everywhere, they're very hard worked. And so, to the extent that they can put time and energy into a case like that is really, I think, more the issue. You have a comment?
Maybe.
So let's just say it's been going on for, like, say, years. If somebody's not getting child support and they don't know what to do, what do they do? What should they do? Whether it be father or mother, who should they call? What should they do?
Somebody's not getting child
Say
support?
they're not getting their child support.
Oh, there's a multitude of things. Like first, you'd obviously call your the child support.
Okay.
See what's going on. This actually happened to me years ago. There are many different reasons why you're not receiving your report. The first one being the obligor is not paying. But there's also things that happen, like companies go bankrupt. And when they go bankrupt, I don't know much about accounting. You'd have to talk to my son, the CBA. But for some reason, the child supports get held up in a corporate bankruptcy. So there are a multitude of reasons. Again, the first being the father not paying. So the first thing you do is you'd call your support officer. Your support officer would contact the obligor, the person who's paying, and find out what's going on. So a lot of times people don't get their payments because the father's unemployed or the payer's unemployed. I mean, there's nothing you could do about that, and that person should go get a modification so you don't rack up arrears.
What about a situation where somebody pays, well, they don't have the money taken out of their paycheck because it's required. If you are working, you have to report your employment and your income with your employer to make sure that's a wage withholding, correct?
That is correct.
So what is if somebody is not working or doesn't have a steady job or goes from job to job, they pay a little bit here every few months, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there, to the point where, then what?
Well, do they really want to be a parent? Is my question.
Well, but here, my question is, what does somebody on the other side who's supposed to be receiving those funds, whether it be the mother or father,
Well,
what do they do?
Well, there's certainly going to be some kind of order in effect, whether it's whatever the number is. And presumably, I guess, based on your scenario, the person isn't paying the full amount, is just kind of throwing a little bit here and there. Likely they're a 1099 attorney, 1099 employee, and not working under a W-2, or maybe just working completely under the table. Again, you are going to have to contact the agency first. See if the agency wants to proceed, if they can maybe use the locator service, see if they can find out where that person's actually working or residing. If that's not the case, then you're going to be approaching an attorney to see if you've got enough grounds for a motion to show cause to get them held in contempt of court. As you are firmly aware, contempt of court involves fines and jail time.
Sure.
And that's before you even get to the felony level non-payment of child support that you were talking about earlier. So I think those are the primary mechanisms for which somebody who is hurt because they aren't receiving significant amount of support that they've been ordered to receive would do.
The best advice I ever got when I went through my divorce and received child support was the safest thing you can do as the primary care parent is don't count on that child support check, because things happen. If you were married and your husband lost his job, his income changes. So don't rely on it. If you get it, great. Use it on the kids. Also one more thing. What can people do? I just saw last week, this was actually a friend of mine. The father was not paying. He would pay sporadically once every 3 months. She got tired of chasing him down. The child's about 10 years old right now. She went to child support, and she signed a paper, which I don't know anything about yet. I just learned about this, to sign away his rights. So is that actually, I know it's the first time I heard it too. And I was
that
like,
possible?
You did what? I know, I asked him for the paperwork. I'm like, show me that. That's what I said, because she remarried and she wants her new husband to adopt this child.
Right.
So, speaking of things you can do. But again, I'm not sure. They said they did this. I haven't seen the paperwork
I don't
yet.
think that's legitimate.
I didn't think so either, but I didn't see the paperwork yet.
Okay.
When I get it, I'll show you.
My understanding is that even if you go to probate court in an attempt to have the new stepfather, what have you, adopt, you have to make a reasonable effort to notify
Yes.
the actual father,
Biological parent.
the biological
Right.
parent.
Right.
And you have to be able to demonstrate that to the probate court. You
Right.
can't just, the mother cannot unilaterally sign off. Now, maybe
That's the
it's
stage
a little.
they're at right now. Is they're in probate court trying to do the adoption.
Okay.
So.
Maybe if there's no father on the birth certificate, there's
We
no
ordered that.
person in the putative father registry.
We ordered that too.
Okay. Maybe if there's no way of tracking that person down, if you still, I think, would have to demonstrate to the probate court that you made a good faith effort to track the biological father down. And if all of those efforts were futile, then perhaps
Maybe.
you could get away with not.
Well, I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah, please do.
Yeah, good case for felon. Well, we only have, what do we have, 20 minutes left in the show? About?
Okay.
So we said we were going to talk about what do you do if you get pregnant, being the mom or being the dad. No, you guys know.
Well,
No.
well, let's
We're
see.
starting
Me being a dad, if I got
After?
pregnant, that would be.
Can I mention what is a joke going around at the domestic relations courts these days? Now that not same-sex marriage is legal under Ohio law, is no longer a marriage between a man and a woman. It's now a marriage between a person and a person. And the law, as it was written prior to recently, said that you had to ask the wife in a divorce if she was pregnant, because if the baby was born 300 days after the divorce was granted, it was still technically a child of the marriage. So the joke that goes around is, do we have to ask both parties, regardless of sex, whether or not they're pregnant when we grant a divorce? So you could be, at least theoretically, under the law now.
It's very complicated. The law,
Yeah.
and the interesting thing, the law gets more. The law is constantly changing.
Yeah.
As well, it should,
Yes.
and hopefully
Okay.
for the better. So the
Okay.
dynamic is, but it's getting complex. Things are getting.
Yeah.
Our lives are no longer simple.
That's true.
Lives are no longer simple.
Go ahead.
Okay, so girl gets pregnant. Let's just use over 18 because it makes it easier. Eric, you can take this. Girl gets pregnant. What should she do?
Well, as an initial matter, you should try to figure out who the father is and plan. Let's hope that's an easy answer.
Yeah, let's hope.
Because isn't always an easy answer, and try to get that person involved. Ultimately, there's going to be a support motion there, but if you want it to be easy, if you can establish a relationship with the potential father right away and have that person show up at the birth and sign the birth certificate, that makes things a lot easier, because now there's a presumption of paternity. You don't have to go down the difficult path of having genetic testing done, and getting the party to show up for a genetic test can be quite a challenge.
Can we go back to the birth certificate, signing
Yes.
the Brown affidavit, because so many gentlemen come through my office. They were at the birth of the child and didn't sign anything because nobody presented them with paperwork.
That seems insane to me.
So, if your girlfriend is pregnant and you go and she gives birth and you cut the cord, ask for the paperwork. It's called Brown affidavit.
the Brown affidavit.
Which turns into the birth certificate, correct? And then remember, we are in the state of Ohio, so you do need to file in juvenile court to get your parentage, or how would you?
Paternity.
Yeah, paternity. Well, see, that confuses people. So the birth certificate is only a presumption that you're the father, correct?
That is correct.
Looking at it from this side of the law.
That is correct.
And then going to court to get that's called the parentage.
So, all right. So when the affidavit is signed, it creates a presumption of paternity. There's a couple of administrative steps that go between that and the time that it is entered on the birth registry at the state of Ohio. Once that happens, it's called a quote-unquote final and enforceable acknowledgement of paternity.
Okay.
At that point, the father of the child, the person who signed the birth certificate, has 1 year under Ohio law to debate that.
Another good thing for you guys to know.
Yes.
1 year.
You have a year. If for whatever reason within that year you find out that you aren't the father, and for a variety of reasons, you better bring that up to the juvenile court immediately, because after that 1 year passes, if you haven't challenged that final and enforceable acknowledgement of paternity, you could be on the hook for child support, even though you are not the biological father.
Right.
Well, you will be on the hook.
You will be on the
You're on
hook.
the
Will
hook.
be.
Yes,
Right.
you're on the hook,
You're on the hook.
unless you debate it within that period of time.
What happens after a year? Let's say you find out 4 or 5 years down the line.
Even after a year, if you can have a DNA test performed that could demonstrate that somebody else is the father, and you're still facing an uphill legal battle that is not completely decided in Ohio law. I have a case along those lines right now. And it's a very difficult uphill slog to get a person off of a birth certificate and have
really
somebody
is.
else named on the
Right.
birth certificate after that initial year has passed. And the agency doesn't want to let that person off the hook either.
Right.
For whatever reason, I
right.
don't see why that is the case, but it is.
Isn't it one of the agencies?
Especially if they're paying.
One of the agency's viewpoints as well is they want to make sure the child's taken care of.
That's correct.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Right, or make it financially
But if there's
There it
another
is, yeah.
person, that is there that could be taking care of the child, that doesn't seem to change their mind, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is an incredible organization.
It really is.
It really is.
So that would be the first thing you do. You have the person who is the father sign the Brown affidavit, put it through the various channels, and then once that birth certificate is issued, then at least as a mother, you would be protected down the road, not only for the availability of child support from that party, but you have a father in the child's life.
And I also wanted to bring up the putative father registry. So say your girlfriend gets pregnant and she doesn't tell you where she's at. She goes off and has the baby. You know about when the baby's going to be born. Hopefully it would be in the state of Ohio. There is a thing called the putative fathers registry that you need to sign up for. And I believe, I haven't checked in a while, I believe you only have 30 days to sign a putative father registry in the state of Ohio. Do you think that's correct?
That probably is correct. I don't actually know the answer
It's
to
about
that one.
time, but make sure you do that.
About that time, sorry.
Because if you sign the putative
Mm-hmm.
father's registry, that will save your child from going up for adoption. So it's a big deal.
That's
Do
absolutely
that.
true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I wonder if knowledge plays into that 30 days at all, or for that matter, the 1 year. I don't have this case exactly, but say for example, you had no idea there was a child out there that happened to be yours, and then somebody else was playing father and maybe even believed that he was the father. You find out much later on that this child even exists. You believe it's yours. I wonder if there's a tolling of that time for a reasonable person to find out that they have a child. Does the 30 days start then, or does the 30 days start at birth, regardless of whether you know or not?
Birth.
I think that's unfair.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. I think there should be no time limit on it.
I mean, to the extent that the time limit is necessary, does it toll
We have a
by
caller.
knowledge? Okay.
Go ahead, caller.
How are you today?
Well, how are you?
Hi.
Good. I got a question about the supervised visitations. How long do they usually last? I mean, how long do they go on for?
I think what the
As far
gentleman
as
means
any
is
change?
how
Is that
many.
something you have to go to the courts to change, or is it the other parent that says, okay, we'll loosen this up, or how long? Basically, my question is, how long have you guys seen it go on for?
How many months should
Yeah.
you be in a supervised visit, right?
Okay. That's
Yes.
going to be up.
It's been years for me.
Oof.
I know,
Oof.
right?
I mean, that's going to be up to the discretion of the judge. You can always file a motion in your case, or have your attorney, hopefully, file a motion in your case to change, modify the supervised visitation order. Present your justifications through that motion, and if you make a good argument, then hopefully it can be removed or at least the terms modified, because I know it's expensive.
So there doesn't need to be a change of circumstances for somebody
No.
to apply to get off of supervised visitation,
No.
seeing they've been on it for 2 years now.
That is correct. You do not need
Okay.
a change of circumstances.
Thanks for your question.
And
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Also, is there something like when a child reaches a certain age that they can pick which parent they would want to be
Oh,
with?
good
Is
question.
that hold true?
It is a good question. It's not, and I hear this one a lot.
Yeah.
It's not as cut and dry as a lot of people think it is. Will the court listen to a child's wishes? Absolutely. It's one of the factors
Okay.
in the best interest analysis. And the older the child gets, I think the more weight the child's preferences have with a judge or a magistrate. But they are not
Okay.
determinative. In other words, a child could say, I want to live with daddy, and that's by itself is not enough. There has to be other factors.
Okay. Because I heard it was 13, and then somebody else was like, no, that's not true. That's
Everybody
not true.
says
It is
that.
true.
Not
I was like,
in Ohio.
So I wonder
heard
where
it-
people
heard
came
a
up with
couple
that.
different stories.
Right.
I heard years ago that Children's Services said the age you can leave a child home alone is 12. So maybe a lot of people got the idea of 12 is the age you can speak. But that's the only place I ever heard that there's an age limit for anything.
It's just a factor, like
Yeah,
Eric,
right.
it's just a factor.
Right.
It's one of the factors that the
I don't
court
know
looks
if
at.
if it was some kind of urban legend or something, who knows?
That's
Right,
totally
well-
that's exactly what is in the state of Ohio.
Right. Thanks for bringing that up because
Good-
a lot of
good-
people
good
do have that
caller.
question.
Good question. Good question.
Any more
Okay, well, I
questions?
appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
If
Thank
there's
you.
no more questions from you, if you give your name to our producer and the phone number, we'll call you after the show and send you out your free book.
Oh, great. Okay.
You're the,
You guys are doing a great job.
Thanks.
you're the big winner today. You're the big winner today.
Thanks for your call. I appreciate it.
Good luck
man.
to you,
Whole
sir.
book?
Pardon me?
I said, do I get the whole book?
You get the whole book
Oh.
and a signed copy.
Hopefully you get the whole book.
First 5 pages. That's it.
Good luck, guys. Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll call you back. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Can I tell my favorite Tommy story, please?
If you
Oh,
have
go
to,
ahead.
If you have to.
Okay, we're gonna go back to Tommy for the last 7 minutes of our show. Tom and I've known each other for quite a while. We thought it was like 30 years, when we were 30-some years, something like that. Anyway, I know Tom would make a good judge because I remember when Anthony Sowell went up for appeal, and I remember seeing the commercials on TV. Or on the news. I'm sorry. No attorney will take the Anthony Sowell appeal, and I'm like, well, I don't blame them. I talked to Tommy the next day. He goes, guess what? I took the Sowell appeal, and I was like, Tommy, you know he's guilty, right? And Tommy said, is he? That is a great attorney. Looking out for your clients. And I know you're going to do the same, looking out for all the people who come before your bench.
Absolutely. So I was assigned for a short period of time to represent Anthony Sowell, who was a serial Cleveland.
Oh, isn't
Kill-
today the...
So
Oh,
the
no, it's
point is, so I got assigned to the appeal, and Maryann said, well, you know he's guilty. I said, well, is he? So I was just assigned. I had not even read the transcripts or anything along those lines. So what I had to explain to Maryann is I've had to others along the way, and I get this question all the time because I was a prosecutor for a lot of years. How can you defend someone you know is guilty? And I said, well, first of all, we're the United States of America, so no one is guilty unless they plead guilty or a judge or jury find he or she guilty. What is important is the state or the government is bringing the charges. It's the burden of proof is on the state or the government to prove those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. So nothing is that cut and dry. So my other thing is, if you want, we're talking about children here. The theme of is children. If something happens to your child needs some sort of major surgery, you're not going to want to go to a kid just out of med school. You're going to want the best, most experienced surgeon, someone who's performed that surgeon hundreds, if not thousands of times. You're going to want the best in the business because we care about our children. So I feel the same way in terms of my quest to run for Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court. You're going to want somebody who goes to court on a regular basis, who deals with attorneys, who deals with judges. I've been in front of all 34 Cuyahoga County Common Pleas judges, all 12 Court of Appeals judges. I've been in front of the Ohio Supreme Court. I get appointed cases in federal court. So you're going to want somebody who's experienced, who knows what the heck they're doing. This is not a playground. This is serious. This is stuff where this affects people's lives, children's lives, adult lives, and this affects our community. So this is serious. So you're going to need somebody. You're going to want somebody who has the integrity, the experience, somebody who's doing this on a day-to-day basis. Again, you're not going to go to some kid out of med school for your kid who needs some serious surgery. You're going to want somebody who does it right. And that's what I believe in, and I'm going to make sure that anyone who comes to my courtroom is going to get respect, understanding, attention, and apply the facts and the law and let the chips fall where they may in terms of that.
Well, I think you make a great judge.
Well, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I wish you the best of luck.
I appreciate it.
And
Tuesday.
Tuesday, May 8th, so
Go vote.
Yep.
everybody vote. Need to vote. We all need to go out and vote.
all right, what else you got, Maryann? We'll take it out with what?
Well, I have some great advice for y'all. If you're 18 and you're not married and you're pregnant, if you're 18 years old and over, you get pregnant, you're not married, get married. That's
Really?
yes.
I don't know if I agree with that advice.
I'm sorry. I'm Catholic.
Okay. Yeah, because as a practicing divorce attorney, those can be very difficult too.
Is it still 50% or more of marriages that end
Yes.
up in divorce?
Well,
Yes.
let me point out that if you get married, the father has just as much rights as the mother does. So it's much easier to establish your parent-child relationship if you get married. I don't care if you get divorced the day after the baby's born, just get married.
Well,
And then you can call Eric.
you could establish your rights as a father, and we should put the background in here. Under Ohio law, if you're an unmarried mother, you are sole custodial by presumption. So this is almost how it always happens. Mother goes for child support. Father says, if I'm paying child support, I want to have time with my kid. So he files for custody. So to answer your question, Maryann, what's less expensive, filing for custody or getting married and getting divorced? I guess that's a case-by-case basis, but I would say generally, filing for custody is less expensive than getting a divorce down the
We
road.
have 30 seconds left,
Okay.
and I just want to say you should get married anyway.
Well, this was a great show, Maryann. Thanks so much, and thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mr. Rein.
Best of luck.
Good luck to you.
Rein, R-E-I-N.
I still did it wrong.
You did it. That's okay. That's okay.
Well, I know I
That's
see you
right.
around there all the time, but we don't actually talk very much because we're usually passing each other,
Always running. We're always
run into
running.
the next
Right.
courtroom. Yeah.
Just the life of you lawyers.
Okay. Thanks
Okay,
a lot.
bye, everybody.
Bye.